Hello, football fans. I'm Tony Shabo, here with Ian Matt, and welcome to Fantasy Showdown. We'll go over some of the news that is buzzing around the league, along with who won the Pick 3 Challenge last week. Now, on to player news. Cardinals cornerback Patrick Peterson is set to return from suspension next week. This will be a valuable asset to the struggling Cardinals defense, who is ranked at 29 on the fantasy rankings.
In other news, Hunter Henry has returned from his knee injury that has kept him sidelined since Week 1. It has already shown against the Steelers last week that Henry is a powerhouse for the Chargers and is a key factor in their offense.
Yeah, he's a big-time factor for the Chargers.
Last week he had 12 receptions, 160 yards with 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, he dropped 30 points last week for the Chargers.
He went off last week.
Yeah, he dropped more than their key players. He dropped more than Keenan Allen, dropped more than Melvin Gordon, Austin Eckler. He was Phillip Rivers' main target. And, this should be a big help to the Chargers, who are 2-4, struggling big time, as they were a powerhouse team last year. And I think the addition of Hunter Henry will be good. They'll put up a lot of points and they'll start winning games. And Hunter Henry will put up a lot of fantasy points as well. Be sure to look at him as a top 5 tight end in the league this year. A player that you should look to start this week is 49ers tight end George Kittle, who has had a spectacular couple of weeks, putting up an average of 19 points the last 2 games. The 49ers are also playing the Redskins this week, who have a fairly poor defense, ranked at 28 on fantasy. Expect Kittle to drop major points this week. Now, honestly, my opinion on the 49ers, they're 5-0, they're killing it, and their offensive scheme is just amazing. George Kittle is carrying the receiving load pretty much. The receivers are like mediocre. I mean, like Marquise Goodwin.
They don't have the best wideouts.
Yeah, they really don't. And their running backs are average, like Matt Breida, Tevin Coleman. They're like, all right, they share the touches, whatever. But George Kittle is the main bulk of their offense, I feel. And that's how they put up a majority of their points, by Kittle just leading it down the field.
Yeah.
Him and Garoppolo.
Another player you should look to start is Jaguars running back Leonard Fournette, who is going up against the worst run defense in the league, the Bengals. The Bengals have let up an average of 184 rushing yards this season, so expect Fournette to run all over the Bengals this week.
Yeah, and the Bengals are also winless, so I feel like Fournette and the Jags are just going to plow the Bengals to the ground.
Last week, Fournette had 20 carries with 72 yards and 6 receptions, so he should just run all over the Bengals.
For sure, and like the Jaguars' offensive line is perfect for him to just absolutely demolish the Bengals, because the Bengals, as you can see from the stat, 184 rushing yards this season. That's terrible. Almost 200 yards a game.
Horrible.
A player you should look to sit is Chargers running back Melvin Gordon, who has had a poor start to the season, dropping mediocre amounts of points to start off. His comeback was very hyped up, but he has been lacking that energy that he possessed last year. That, along with the fact that Austin Eckler is still putting up a solid amount of points, makes it all the reason to sit Gordon this week.
Another player you should look to sit is Jarvis Landry, who has been the shadow behind Odell Beckham Jr. in Cleveland. Landry had one good game this year against the Ravens, and other than that, he has been quite average so far.
Yeah, and I think he's been behind Odell too much.
Yeah.
He hasn't really shined yet. He hasn't, put out that.
I think he's only had 3 or 4 catches a game, maybe not even that. He hasn't really done anything to show this season.
Yeah, he hasn't done anything at all. I mean, you got Odell averaging more than him, obviously, more points. He's at 13.2. Jarvis is averaging 11.7, but still, he's not really making that much of an effort to break out. It's really like he's just sitting on the sidelines and just letting Odell do his work.
He's just there taking up space.
Yeah, and it's showing because the Browns are 2-4.
Yeah.
It's kind of pitiful, to be honest.
He dropped so many wide open passes last week.
Yeah, it's kind of sad to see how the Browns are turning out this season. A player you should look to pick up off your waivers is Chargers tight end Hunter Henry, who is only picked up in about half of the leagues in fantasy. His performance against the Steelers proves that he is a solidified top 10 tight end for the weeks to come. And you should pick him up while he's available. Like I said before, Phillip Rivers and Hunter Henry had the highest pass completion for this week between a Chargers player.
Another player you should look to pick up off waivers is Eagles running back Myles Sanders, who had an incredible span of weeks, outclassing fellow back Jordan Howard. Picking up Sanders as a backup running back should be a solid for any team coming into Week 7.
Yeah. Myles Sanders, perfect pickup, honestly. Myles Sanders has been showing his worth. He's been dropping solid numbers. He's been putting up above 12, 13 points. That's a solid backup running back.
Last week he had 13 receptions for 1 touchdown and 219 yards, so I think that's solid for a backup running back.
Oh, yeah. So if, you have a running back that's on a bye week, running back that's injured, Myles Sanders would be a perfect pickup for you.
Yeah.
So now it's time to see who won our Pick 3 challenge last week. The total score for last week was 54.9 for Ian and 77.4 for me. Since Ian lost last week, he will have to eat the blazing wings. The loser for this week will have to do the cinnamon challenge. So for this week, who are your picks, Ian?
My quarterback, I got Gardner Minshew. He's put up ridiculous numbers this year. He just kind of came out of the shadows. Nobody really expected it. My wideout, I got Josh Gordon. He's an iffy player. It's questionable what he'll do, but he's got Tom Brady, and I think he'll put up some good numbers this week. And my running back, I have Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb's always putting up good numbers, and he's just a solid back to have.
I'm not going to lie with you. I kind of disagree with the Gardner Minshew and Josh Gordon picks, but, whatever you want to do. Gardner Minshew's been pretty average in my eyes. Josh Gordon put up 1 point last week. But, hey, it's your picks. For my picks, I'm going to pick Matt Ryan. He's been solid this season, honestly. I know he'll be consistent enough to put up solid 15 to 20 points for me this week. And for my receiver, I've got Michael Thomas. Speaking of consistency, this guy's been putting up 20 points every week. I'm pretty sure he's had one bad game. He's been solid for the rest of them. And I'm going to pick Leonard Fournette only for the solid fact that they're playing the Bengals. And the Bengals defense is terrible. As we said before, 184 rushing yards a week this whole season. It's pretty sad.
Yeah.
So we'll see who wins this week. From Lanfear TV, I'm Tony Shabo.
And I'm Ian Matt.
And we'll see you next week.